went to the shop called The Works today, and they had these 2 packs for £4. So I picked up the ATAT one with the snow speeder because I've not got the ATAT, so I thought I'd get that. And I've got the Black Series titanium version, so if I can find that, or I'll just review it. And there's the snow speeder. Yeah. The main thing I got was this book about George Lucas, and I've read quite a lot of books about his life, so being a Star Wars fan, and it's quite useful because if you want to get into filmmaking, just reading about his life story is quite interesting, and so this is one I bought today. It was originally £9.99, and this will go up to him selling off Disney to Disney. So that looks like a quite good book, and these are other ones that most of them I've read. So George Lucas by Jim Smith, and Virgin book. Then there's this little one, George Lucas, and that's I'm sure James Clark wrote this. Sure, I read that. This one's a big hefty one, George Lucas, a biography by John Baxter. It's a good book, lots of nice colour pictures, very detailed, about 10 years old now. This is the granddaddy of them all, Skywalking, the life and films of George Lucas by Dale Pollock. And you see him, if you watch The People vs. George Lucas, and you've got the 2-disc version, he does a good interview in the extras for about 20 odd minutes. So it's quite a good book, this. Even though George Lucas sort of distanced himself now from this book. And then there's this one, George Lucas Companion, the complete guide to Hollywood's most influential filmmaker, Howard Maxford. So you've got some pictures. I'm not sure if I've read this one, but you're going to find that most of the books follow the same sort of structure, which is starting with his early life, born in 1944, to I think his father was a Methodist, owned a stationery shop, instilled that sort of work ethic into him. And you can see that in Lucasfilm Limited when he was in control of it and the building of Skywalker Ranch. And then he most famously on all of these books we'll talk about, this is the crash when he crashed his little Fiat car into a tree and nearly killed himself, and then decided to go to university and become a filmmaker. And then they're going to talk about influences on him. So he liked comics like Disney comics and stuff like that, and characters. And then when he was older, got more influenced by the works of Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero of a Thousand Faces, and Japanese movies like by Akira Kurosawa, and those are very influential on Star Wars, and especially the first movie. And then other things, early films, THX 1138, how he stood out in his class as one that was going to make it, how in his class there was many people that did become quite famous as movie makers and such. How he met Francis Ford Coppola because he won a prize, and how they became friends, and then they did THX 1138 as the movie version, and then they were going to do Apocalypse Now. George Lucas was originally slated to direct Apocalypse Now, and some of that, the sort of legacy of the Vietnam defeat came into Return of the Jedi, where the Ewoks almost defeat the Galactic Empire. Then from that onto Empire Strikes Back, which he financed himself. Then the sort of branching out of his companies into Lucasfilm and all that sort of stuff, LucasArts and other stuff like that. The breakup of his marriage, sort of raising a family by himself, and sort of that might have influenced him into making changes to A New Hope, where Greedo shot first and Han doesn't, sort of making him a more family friendly character rather than how he was in the original. episode 1, 2 and 3, the fallout from that, fan backlash. They even made a movie about it called The People versus George Lucas. And then you know, how eventually he, you know, decided to sell Lucasfilm, and now we're reaping the reward from that as fans, I guess. So, you know, these books, I mean, I think it's recommended that if you're a Star Wars fan, that you should read a biography about George Lucas, and there's lots of good ones to begin with. This one looks good. I haven't read it yet, so, but it looks quite good. It looks quite substantial, and it's nice looking at the pictures and stuff like that. And you know, but I guess reading is something that isn't so au fait with the younger generation now. They prefer to get their information from the internet and stuff like that, but it's nice to, like, you could sit in a bath and read a book and stuff like that. Or you know, I like to read on the Kazi or Bog as they say, but you know, at least I'm reading, because it's something that's going out of fashion. So these are some of the books you could get. So let's just finally go through them. George Lucas, A Life, and that's by Brian J. Jones. Looks good. George Lucas by Jim Smith, Virgin Books. George Lucas, A Little Thing, Slither of a Book by James Clark. The John Baxter biography, Star Wars. This looks great. It is great. I've read this one. The Dale Pollock book, very good book. The Life and Films of George Lucas, and The George Lucas Companion by Howard Maxford. So you could, you know, definitely realise how difficult it is to become a filmmaker, and how dedicated you have to be to the art of your art and such, and you know, and how he felt on the knife edge. He felt A New Hope or Star Wars in 1970 was going to not do very well, and he was quite amazed how well it did. Also, you know, famous other things, you know, like with A New Hope, he was found directing quite arduous and very difficult to relate to the stars, and all he seemed to be able to say was faster, more intense, and that's become a running gag now. And then that's why he probably stepped down from directing for quite a long time. Then when he gets back into it in episode 1, 2 and 3, he gets quite you know, I mean, I think episode 1, you know, was a bit, I don't know what went wrong with episode 1. I mean, there's good, he should have just started with an Anakin Skywalker at about 20-25, about to fall to the dark side, and focus more on Darth Vader and get him quite soon in the costume, and made it a bit more darker, like Revenge of the Sith was. But maybe that should have been the starting point for the prequels, and, you know, extended that out a bit. But who are we to judge? You know, it talks about other films, you know, like Willow, other innovations like the sound, THX, and all that sort of stuff he was into, and bits and bobs. LucasArts, all the great games we used to get, and stuff like that. Rescue and Fractalus. So if you want to take a dive into reading a biography about George Lucas, here's a few good choices. Most of these you can find secondhand, probably on Amazon or eBay, and just track them down and get reading. Okay, and if you go to Thingy, you can get this for £4 now, the works. Okay, so cheers, bye.